So hello everybody, and welcome to this question and answer session, talking about occupational therapy and how that can help people with scleroderma and Raynaud's. All this technology is very new to me, so you're going to have to bear with me. I've never done a Facebook Live session, so I don't quite know what's going to happen in terms of where comments come or what I'm going to see. So as I say, bear with me. I probably, like a lot of you, have been locked down now for about 10 weeks, so it's quite nice for me to speak, but I would benefit from seeing faces, and still that's not what I'm getting at the minute. So anyway, we will see how we go. And as I say, it'll be very lovely if I get some comments through and I can see that there is actually people out there with me. So let me just introduce myself. So my name's Lucy, and I'm an occupational therapist. I've been working in rheumatology and pain management for about the last 25 years. And I also myself have scleroderma. I have the limited version, and I was diagnosed with that in 2004. And I have many of the typical things that I'm sure many of you are used to, things like calcinosis in my fingers, Raynaud's, telangiectasia, problems with my joints, tightness of my skin, etc. So I am very well aware of some of the issues that we can all be dealing with. So let me just start, because we had a few of the questions that had already come through, and one of them was basically, what is occupational therapy? And often people have no idea what occupational therapists are or what they do, unless they've probably been referred to one or seen them. And if you're a member of the older generation, then you might associate occupational therapists with weaving baskets or doing crafts and things like that. So yes, it's something that's a bit different. Now, occupational therapists are therapists who are always looking at people's everyday lifestyles. So they are talking to people about the everyday things that they do and ordinarily would take for granted. So anything from personal care to domestic tasks to hobbies, leisure, work, etc. And they talk to people about all aspects of those tasks and how they're managing given the issues that they're having with whatever health problem that they have. So in a way, they're quite holistic. They look at the physical symptoms that people get and the impact of those on everyday life. But they also talk to people about their psychological well-being as well, because as we all know, that when you have health problems and when you are limited in what you can do, then it can be incredibly challenging to cope day to day, and a whole array of different feelings will come up related to that, and often it can be very difficult. So let's have a look at some of the things that we do as occupational therapists. So first of all, it's a very, very practical base. So if I am seeing somebody, I will be asking them, what do they do? What's their daily routine? What tasks do they have to do? And how do they do those? What techniques do they use? And then we will be looking at what sort of environment that they live in. You know, are they in a house or are they in a bungalow? Have they got level access? What's the layout of their property? What's the access? And we'll be talking about whether that helps or hinders them. And we will also be looking at whether they have any equipment or gadgets or technology that they use to help them with their daily tasks. And often therapists will do visits to people's homes so they can actually see the reality of what they're dealing with. So I quite enjoy that bit when I'm actually going around having a little look around somebody's home, because you can tell a lot, and when you're actually there you can see the difficulties that people are having. So that's very, very common for somebody to come out to your house as well. Okay. Now, some of the things that perhaps a little less known about what occupational therapists do, particularly in relation to scleroderma, is that there are a whole band of specialist therapists who work very specifically in rheumatology. And in fact, there's a specialist section dedicated to the Royal College of Occupational Therapists. and they just deal with people who have things like inflammatory arthritis, scleroderma, lupus, Sjogren's, Raynaud's, etc. And so they will probably talk to you about other things as well, and they will probably do quite a detailed hand assessment. As we all know, the hands get very significantly affected when people have scleroderma. And so really a therapist needs to look at you and see, what's happening. What is your range of movement like? What's the condition of your skin? They might look at the strength of your hands, and they might look at how you use your hands and how easy it is for you to function. And they may then suggest exercises or activities that you can do. They may also, and I don't know if anybody's experienced it, but they may also use things like wax bars to condition the tissues and improve range of movement. And so this is quite a specific thing. And what happens then is that in some hospitals, it might also be a more specialized hand therapist. So sometimes within this context, physiotherapists and occupational therapists do a very similar job, and it just depends on your hospital as to who you might be seeing. Now, Kim has come in with a comment, and she said, how can we get a referral? Well, I will talk a little bit about how you get a referral to different OTs, because what I'm going to come on to is that there are different OTs working in different areas. But for these types of specialist OTs that I'm talking about, what you really need to do is get your consultant rheumatologist, or some of you might have a consultant dermatologist or perhaps other specialists, because these types of therapists tend to work within the hospital setting, and they usually work in outpatients, and they would see you there for an appointment. So that's the easiest thing. If you are seeing a consultant, then you need them to do a referral, and that's usually a really easy process. If you are not seeing a consultant, or you have temporarily been discharged and the responsibility comes to your GP, then it's quite common that your GP can refer you to the therapy department at your hospital. But sometimes that's not always the case. So he might need to refer you back to rheumatology to get to that service. But it's quite difficult because all the hospitals operate quite differently. So it's one of those things to talk to your GP or your consultant about how you can get a referral in your area. But yeah, it's definitely possible to do that. Okay. And Alison, hello Alison, you've come in there and asked, are there exercises to keep the face, skin and muscles flexible? Okay. So often perhaps that might not sit under the remit of occupational therapy. That might come more under the physical therapists, but there are actually, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there might be some exercises which are on the Scleroderma and Raynaud UK website about that, or I have seen that you can do a Google search or go on YouTube about it. But again, they tend to be some quite interesting and bizarre exercises. I shan't do them because you really don't want to see the inside of my mouth, but they're all about doing stretching and mouth exercises. And there is a whole thing about facial yoga. I suspect if you go on YouTube, you would find some fascinating things. Yeah, even if you want a good laugh, that might be a good thing. But yeah, again, just keeping that face moving. And that's exactly what a therapist would be looking at doing with your hands as well. So stretching, exercising, keeping them moving and keeping them well conditioned so that they stay as functional and as strong and as useful as possible. Now, occupational therapists also will do splinting. Now, some of you may have come into contact with occupational therapists splinting if you have particularly contractures of your hands, because often with people with scleroderma, the skin tissue becomes tight and you lose range of movement. And sometimes you get what they call fixed flexion deformities of your fingers. And Sometimes they will make splints, which will stretch the tissues out and prevent your hands clawing down into the palm. You can see on, I'm sure you don't want to see my knobbly old fingers, but I've got fixed flexion deformities on my little finger and also on this tight finger here. And I also can't make a fist. So I have in my time had different splints. Now you can get splints that stretch the tissue and that you wear at night. And you might also have splints that you wear during the day, and you can get them so that they support and protect your finger joints. So sometimes they do little ring splints on your fingers. Sometimes you have supports that support the wrist. It's very, very individual. So that's that we all know that people who have scleroderma, although we might all have scleroderma, we're incredibly different. We all have vastly different symptoms. And it's very much a very individual tailored thing. There isn't one splint for everybody. There isn't one therapy or exercise. So it's very important that we get it tailored to you. Well, I'm seeing some other comments now. Marie saying, oh, that's a lovely comment, saying that she'd had some extremely helpful advice. Well, that's always good to know. And Samantha saying about inpatient treatment for Raynaud's. Okay, I'll come back to that, Samantha. That's something I do know about, but that's not necessarily perhaps something an expert, an occupational therapist might deal with, but I will come back to that. And Sarah, you've asked about splinting in relation to carpal tunnel. So yes, you can. Splints for carpal tunnel often are resting splints, and they're designed to open up this part of your wrist, because often you can get thickening and tightness or inflammation around this, and it presses on the nerve that goes through your wrist here. And so when you splint it, you're stretching the tissue but opening it up to do that. And sometimes for some people they're very effective and other people not. Definitely it's a conversation with your consultant, because if your inflammatory markers are quite high, then you probably find that that might be contributing to your carpal tunnel. But it's best to have that discussion if no treatment or intervention seems to be helpful with either your GP or your consultant, because there might be differences. Now, here's a name I recognise. There's a lovely lady, Dorothy. Now, she lives very near me, and she, part of our Norfolk contingent. So his question about, you're just making my life difficult here, because you're asking questions which are medical questions as well as this. And she's asking about whether there's an alternative to AdCal, and the answer is yes, there absolutely is. There are lots of different alternatives in terms of medications, which are ways of getting calcium or vitamin D into you, and that are easier to swallow. So things like alpha calcidol, which are a tiny chewy tablet, or easy to swallow. She also asked about cannabis oil. We really are coming away from occupational therapy, but I'm going to answer that from a pain management perspective, and that there is no good evidence, and the type of CBD oil that you buy over the counter is about 50 times weaker than a normal treatment dose. So I wouldn't recommend it. But anyway, thank you for your comment there on that, Alison, as well. So going back, so yes, so you might also see an occupational therapist regarding splinting as well. And these are these specialist OTs. You might also, and the title occupational therapist, sometimes people confuse it with occupational health, which is where you need to go to if you are struggling with your working situation. But we do talk to people a lot about their employment. And we may also do work visits to see what people's environments are like and make suggestions about equipment or changes to the layout of people's workplace. We might support them and act as an advocate between them and their employer. And we often get involved with the Access to Work team, who can help you if you are in a work environment. I'm laughing because I can see Dorothy's comment, and she's apologising to me for giving me difficult medical questions. So we might get involved with the Access to Work team, who can are part of a government scheme. So if you're working and you're struggling and you need equipment, or you might need somebody else to help, then there is support out there. And we often liaise with what we call the disability employment advisors. So they're very useful people to know if you are currently working. And also if you are wanting to go back to work and you are currently claiming ESA or anything like that. Okay. Let me just see a comment here from Avtar. Would wax baths actually work, as my hospital said not? Also, any suggestions on fingers? As for the past few weeks, my finger joints have been painful. Okay, so wax baths are not a magic alternative to curing anything, but what they do is that they can be very helpful with improving circulation, and they can also be quite helpful for conditioning tissue. It isn't something that you can have one treatment and then it would stop. It can be quite helpful. We often have advocated people to have their own therapy baths so that they can use them to keep doing daily exercises at home, and it warms up the hands and it improves the condition of the skin. But it's something that it is best to do on a daily basis. Again, whenever you're doing exercises or stretching, we would advocate like a little and often approach. Okay, so I'm also just briefly going to talk about other things that occupational therapists do, and then I'm going to come back to Marie's question about tasks. So other things that we get involved with are, I often teach people relaxation techniques. And the reason that we do that is because it can be quite stressful living with long-term conditions like scleroderma. And also people often get quite a lot of pain and muscle tension. And they also often have issues with their lungs and heart and breathing. And also problems with sleep, and relaxation can be fantastic for helping with all those things. So we often teach people breathing techniques and imagery and relaxation strategies to improve those situations. We also, and there is a question that I had sent in about sleep, so I also spend a lot of time talking to people about strategies to improve their sleep. Because that can be quite challenging for a lot of reasons. Lots of people do have problems with sleep, and often that is related to pain in terms of scleroderma, but it can also be to do with indigestion. It can also be to do with breathlessness, so many things related to scleroderma. And lastly, we talk quite a lot about fatigue management. Now, I am sure that there is nobody who's listening today that does not know what I mean about having problems of fatigue. And I think personally that sometimes the fatigue is worse than pain because it can significantly impact on what you do. And there isn't a great treatment out there to improve fatigue. And so it does rely on self-management strategies. So that's something we spend a lot of time about. Now, I'm just going to come back to what we were saying about the different OTs that you can be referred to. So we talked a little bit about the OTs who specialise in scleroderma will really be based in your hospital. Now, in some areas of the country, you may not have a hospital unit that does that, but you may find that if you attend a specialist clinic, somewhere like the Royal Free, or perhaps Chapel Allerton, places like that, or Salford, that they definitely do have occupational therapy teams, and your GP might be able to refer you to some of them. You might have to travel, but it might be worth that. Now, otherwise, occupational therapists are often linked to the GPs and they work in the community. So it's quite common that, particularly if you are struggling with day-to-day tasks, that your GP could refer you to an occupational therapist who works in the community. Now, they will always do a home visit because that's where they're based. And they might not have specialist knowledge of your scleroderma, but they would probably have just as good a knowledge of all the equipment and the gadgets that are available to help you carry out daily tasks. So that's definitely worth it as well. And lastly, there are occupational therapists who are based in your adult social services departments. Okay, now you can self-refer to those. So if you are struggling day to day and you want somebody to come and do a home visit, then contact social services and say, I'm having problems, I've got this condition, I think I need an occupational therapy assessment. And they're free. Somebody will come and do a home visit and they will come and see what you're having difficulty with. Now, even if I was seeing you and you were having problems at home, if it required a major adaptation, so for example, if you currently had a bath and you couldn't manage that and you needed a level access shower, then I would also need to refer you to social services, because they hold the purse strings and they do the assessments and they manage the grant system, and they would assess that. So the social services OTs always deal with the bigger things. So if you needed any major access work to your property, if you needed, as I say, things like level access showers or through floor lifts or stair lifts, things like that, then that always is your social services occupational therapist. Okay, so I hope that covers that a little bit. Right, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to have a look at the question that Marie has sent in. So she has asked about rethinking tasks. Instead of taking the kettle to the water, you would take the water to the kettle. And she's talked about gadgets for opening tins. Drying your hair is hard when your hairdryer feels heavy. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So what we spend an awful lot of time looking at is this aspect of managing daily tasks. And we look at this in some detail. So we will be talking to you about everyday tasks that you do. So for example, getting washed, getting dressed, having a shower, putting your makeup on, making a cup of tea, doing your meal preparations, handling your cutlery or your crockery, managing meal preparation, shopping. So pretty much everything that you can think of, that's what we would be looking at. And we all know that those everyday tasks, particularly when you have issues with your hands, can be a real challenge. And I know that particularly around meal preparation, my kitchen is an area where there is a lot of swearing that occurs. The air can turn very blue because I'm very good at dropping things. I'm very good at knocking the end of my fingers, and that causes extreme pain. You'll all be familiar with these things, yeah? So there on the market are so many different gadgets that can help us do these tasks. What I would suggest people look at, if they have not seen it before, is there is an excellent website, which is the Disabled Living Foundation. That is www.dlf.org.uk. We may have a link on the Scleroderma and Raynaud's UK website, but if we haven't, I will make sure that Ollie puts one there. But the Disabled Living Foundation is a website that covers every single gadget known to man, and it provides lots of advice around buying equipment for whether it's eating, dressing, washing, toileting, getting in that bed, buying an appropriate chair, buying an appropriate bed, you name it, it's on there. And what they do is they list all the types of equipment, they list the companies that provide it. So you can have a look at things like the cost of it, you can have a look at where you get it. Now, I guess it might not be correct for me to say this, but I would then probably go on Google and do a little search, or go on Amazon and probably find it a lot cheaper there. But so technology can help us an awful lot. You can find lots of stuff. You can also find some of these products on eBay, so you can often get them for a lot cheaper. Or I've come across them in charity shops, so it's worth having a look around. Even places like your local supermarket or store will stock a lot of these things. So yeah, so have a look on the Disabled Living Foundation website, because you will be amazed at all the technology and things that are on there. Because things like, let's go back to what Marie was saying about kettle. So kettle is easier or more difficult dependent on so many things, isn't it? The weight of the kettle, how easy it is to pour, how easy it is to fill, how easy it is to tip. Um, Often you can get these kettles which are just accommodate 1 cup, so that makes it a lot less weight to lift. But it really matters what the handle is like. It really matters what the weight of that is. A lot of people will use a plastic jug which they fill the kettle with. And a lot of people nowadays will use these hot water taps. I don't know if you've seen what I mean, but I think the brand name of one of them I'm thinking is Quooker. And what happens is basically it's like having a tap um, in your kitchen, and you just have as much hot water as you need. So that can be a damn sight easier than juggling the kettle. Many people will use a tiny travel jug kettle, so that especially if they're only making a drink for them. So things like that can be a boon. And if you, several people in terms of the questions they had, they talked about um, ulcers on their hands, skin tightness, contractures, and that they were having difficulty with a number of things. So things like meal preparation, cooking, ironing, etc. So again, have a shop around, because everything can be made easier. So for example, if we think about cooking and meal preparation, nowadays technology is really helping us. Just say hello there to Marilyn, who's made a comment there. And technology really helps us. So I don't know how I would function if I didn't have things like an electric can opener, or a food processor, or a slow cooker, or my marvelous steamer or microwave. And I also have something, I don't know if people use the old-fashioned wire baskets that we used to fry our chips in back in the 70s. But that's a great alternative. You can cook your veg and pasta in that, and then you lift the wire basket out of your heavy saucepan, and instantly you've strained the thing. So that can be helpful. Um, I'm a great advocate. I don't care. I use frozen veg. I will use ready meals. I will buy pre-prepped veg from the supermarket, anything that is going to make my life easier, because it is a challenge for me to use my hands. But if we think about what tools you're using in the kitchen, so serrated knives are easier than straight blades. I don't know if people know what I mean by the rocker knives. So like those herb knives that you use to rock and chop up your herbs, they are great for chopping veg. And also you can get the similar things, ergonomic handled knives, where the handle is at this angle, and then the blade comes across here, and you use your bigger muscles. Not very good for me to demonstrate. I'm sorry, I apologize. I really need the knife here to show you, but those types of things work well, because you're using your big arm muscles rather than your tiny fingers, which often are very difficult to use. And things like when you're using, even things like when you have scleroderma, you have to think so hard about what you're using all the time. You have to think about the weight of the plates you're using, the weight of the mug that you're going to use. What's the handle like? When I go and buy a mug, I try and think, oh God, I've got to get my hand in there. And you know what it's like? Sometimes nowadays there's a fashion for having afternoon tea out of vintage cups, and I can never get my poor fat fingers through those little handles. So, it really makes a difference. But even something like lightweight insulated mugs can make a big difference. I struggle to get my hand around glasses because I can't open my hand enough. So I often use glasses with a stem that I can hook my hand into. So many different things out there. So if you're struggling with a task, really step back and have a look to think, is this the easiest way I can do it? Might there be a gadget that can help me? Might technology help me? Because if we think about our whole environments, as we said, it can help us or hinder us. I think it can make a significant difference whether your place is decluttered, easy maintenance, whether you've got things at the easy height for you. We had a question somebody was asking about the difficulty they had opening their cupboards. And so even, the type of cupboards that you have in your kitchen can make a difference. In my kitchen, I have massive handles on my door fronts, so I can hook my hand up and pull them. But I've known people to use sliding doors on their cupboards. I have known people to use there. You can get cupboards and drawers now which you push on and they pop back. So if you haven't changed your kitchen for a while but you're struggling with it, there's so many different handles and alternatives, and you don't have to change the whole carcass of your kitchen. You can absolutely just change the fronts. There's whole companies that just specialize in changing the fronts of your cupboards and your drawers and fitting different handles and things like that. So yes, don't just struggle on. There may well be things. There's also sometimes when I was working and making splints myself, and I can't do that anymore because of the problems I have, but when I was, we used to use some of the thermoplastic materials that we made splints out of, and we would fashion all sorts of gadgets to help people make different things. It's really worthwhile. I have I have a person in my life who makes gadgets, and that's my father. So he's fashioned all sorts of different gadgets to help me with different tasks. You know, anything from trying to use my car key more easily to key turners to help me get keys in and out of the back and front door. So many different things. If you bear with me, I have a few gadgets. I know this is not perhaps the easiest thing, but we would try, because ordinarily in the department I would have lots of equipment that I could show you, but just bear with me 1 second. Right, so don't know if anybody has seen any of this. Now, what is this that I am coming up here with? This is rubber zote. Okay, now rubber zote is what you use to lag pipes with, but it is soft, it is spongy, and it comes in different borehole sizes, and it is fantastic for making pens, makeup brushes, toothbrushes, hairbrushes, knives, forks, etc. Bigger and more chunkier and more comfortable to hold. Here is something else. What is this blue square I am holding up? This is called Dyson. Now, most OTs will have something like this, but you can buy it in rolls. It is a tacky material, and you put it on top of jars or taps or basically any turner that you have difficulty with, and it will grip. You can also put it underneath bowls or plates when you're doing cooking, and it will hold it steady. So things like that. There are no end of different jar openers. There are also, here is my gadget for bottle opening, but also the ring pull cans that are impossible to get your finger under and pull up. This, and sometimes you'll find an alternative use. So I use this because I cannot get my hot water bottle top on or off, and this I can tighten it up with, and that makes me independent, which pleases me quite a lot. So, and here is my, see, this is the DIY. This is a DIY wooden tool that my father created that I can hook around my key and pull. So I apologize if you think that's bizarre, but honestly, sometimes you have to adapt, and there's all sorts of ways to do that. I also, one of the things I have difficulty with is pushing down with strength. And it's going to, I apologize, it's perhaps not the sort of thing that you want to hear just before you're having tea, but the push button on my toilet system, I can't push down. And so I have a little gadget that I can push down with. So these are all things, and anybody hopefully who has an occupational therapist, that they would obviously like to think a bit laterally about these things as well. So hopefully if you have and you are struggling with tasks with your hands, that there are things out there. Now, just on that, technology, as we were saying, can make a massive difference. So you know, don't be afraid to use stuff that you think other people might judge you on. So I know people who use things like robot hoovers to do their hoovering, and you can get these to do things like lawn mowing as well. But anything that is going to help you. If you want to know what is the lightest weight hoover that you could use, or the easiest kettle, or the nicest steam iron that you are going to be able to use. It's also worth having a look on the Which website. Now, if you know Which, they do product reviews. So they're not obviously doing those for people who have health problems, but that can be very helpful information because we can know, what does that product look like? What's it likely to do? But whenever you're trying to do these things, they are trying to sell you their product, and it might not necessarily work for you. So don't be ashamed. Always try before you buy. And just coming back to technology, nowadays there is a lot of smart technology, which means that if we have problems with our hands, we can still get tasks done ourselves because we can get Alexa or something else. I shouldn't be advertising, but these types of things, this smart technology can rig up within your house things like heating, lighting, curtains, doors. One of my favorite programs is DIY SOS, if anybody watches that. But you will know that people with quite profound disabilities can get technology just linked up to their iPad to do many, many things. So have a look. If there are tasks day to day that you are struggling with, there might be something out there that would make it easier. Now, I know myself, and I won't pretend that there is a solution for everything. And often when you have ulcers, when you have severe contractures, then there's not easy alternatives for managing these things. There's not, excuse me, moving those gadgets out of the way. There's not a magic formula out there to do these things, but often you can make things easier. So do have a little hunt around. Okay, right, I am coming back here. Right, and there is a question here from Aves who said it's a bit off subject. She's asking about specialist centres. I unfortunately, Aves, I couldn't really comment from not having been in them about what is best. That might be a conversation to have with your GP or your consultant and see what they think is the best specialist centre for you. But definitely when you have scleroderma, I think it's worth making sure you have a consultant who specialises in it and a team of therapists who do as well. Okay. Kim, can you recommend anything to protect calcinosis on fingertips and knuckles? Right. I'm going to shoot to the side again, Kim. Right. Now, again, I apologise because on my camera you might not see it properly. Can you see, oops, can you see this? All right. Now, these are little finger caps. Inside them, they have a soft gel. And I use these to protect the ends of my fingers, particularly if I know I'm going out somewhere where I might knock them. Because I have calcinosis, and you can probably see, in all my fingers. And these are marvellous. And you can also get little tube ones. So I've got some lumps down the side of one of my fingers. There we go. So they are marvellous. Now, I got those from my physiotherapy colleague at work, who also looks after my hands. So it would be worth having a conversation with maybe a physiotherapist, a hand therapist, or an occupational therapist. I don't know who would be best in your area, to see whether something like that would be helpful. If you've got them in obscure places, I sometimes bandage or pad them. There are quite a few things that you can use. There's lots of different materials. Let me show you. This is another alternative finger protector. This is made out of neoprene, which is what they make wetsuits out of. That can be helpful. And even just buddy strapping fingers together using something like this. So that is like a soft material fabric. So that can be helpful too. So there's lots of things out there that your therapist can recommend and fit for you. to protect and make your fingers more comfortable. I hope that answers that question a little bit there. I'm going to come back up here now. Sarah has, or Sarah, I hope I'm saying your name right. Can you recommend any relaxation techniques? Okay, so we could spend a whole hour talking about sleep and relaxation. So nobody would be happy for me to do that, but I am going to just have a little discussion around that. So relaxation, at the end of the day, all of the techniques will be based about trying to calm your stress response. And our normal stress response is what they call the fight or flight response. So we all know, when adrenaline gets pumping and your heart rate goes up and your muscles tense and you feel a bit hot and a bit high wired, a bit like me doing a presentation on Facebook and those types of things, and you need to calm down. And all of those things happen automatically. We don't control. I can't say to you, change your heart rate. You just can't do it. But the thing that we can control is our breath. So all relaxation techniques are based on the breath, and they are based on taking a slower out breath than an in breath. So for example, breathing in for 2 and breathing out for 3 or 4. So you're all the time emphasizing a slower and more relaxed out breath. And it doesn't matter what technique of relaxation you do, whether it's a breathing technique or imagery or things, it will all be about slowing down the rate of your breath and emphasizing the out breath. So even if you were lying in bed and you were doing some slow breaths and you were just focusing on letting go on the out breath. So what it would look like is taking a calm breath in, holding, and then breathing out really slowly and repeating that. And you can count from 1 to 10 so that you're slowing the breaths down. But often one of the things that stops us sleeping is we get very busy brain, or we're too busy churning over all the stressful events of the day. So if you want to give your brain something different, a good relaxation technique before you go to sleep is doing some nice visualization exercises. So imagining yourself in a place where you've been on holiday, or a place that you really enjoy, or being with somebody that you love, or anything like that. Anything basically that is going to calm you down and make you more relaxed is basically a relaxation technique. You don't have to have anything fancy. Lots of people will use things like the Headspace app or Calm app. And there are so many different things that are online that you can download. Different people like different voices. Some people like music, some people like sounds from nature. So I would have a hunt, play around. Like I say, there's lots of free stuff out there. There's lots of stuff on YouTube as well. And there's lots of apps that you can download for free to your phone. So that's really worth it. If you're not a person who tends to go on the internet, and then there are some very good books which usually have CDs attached and go through a whole range of different relaxation exercises. But like I say, there's lots of alternatives, but they will all come down to what's happening with your breath. I don't know if people have come across the doctor called Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. He did a series called Doctor in the House, and he has written a number of books. And one of his books is called The Stress Solution, and another one is called The 4-Pillar Plan, and he talks about eat well, move well, sleep well, and relax well. And both of those books have got some good basic relaxation and breathing strategies in them. So yeah, if you prefer books to that would be worth having a look at. But often just basic breathing techniques. And I suppose in terms of, somebody had asked about, I'm just checking my questions, apologize for looking off. I'd asked about sleep in general, and lots of people, not just people with scleroderma, have issues with sleep. And I suppose if we think about some of the things to do, or what I call easy wins in terms of managing sleep, Some of them are about, I suppose, things that can impede your sleep. So the basic stuff like making sure that your bedroom is dark, making sure that there is minimal noise, or that you have, you kick out the person who snores, or you have earplugs, making sure you get the temperature of the bedroom right. And that's always a challenge with Raynaud's. I am sure that we all have the woolly sock and hot water bottle, even in the summer. But often it's good to have the room cooler and then your bed warmer. So that is important. Things like blue light. So on your devices, your phones, etc., or the TV, you really need to avoid those about an hour before you go to bed, because it tricks the brain into thinking it's still daylight. So avoid those, or turn those to the orange light to make that easier. All the traditional stuff like warm baths or milky drinks, they can make a difference. I suppose thinking about your fluid or dietary intake, lots of people with scleroderma have issues around indigestion, which can keep them awake. So that, make sure that you've got the bed of the head of your bed higher, or that you've got a system so you can stagger your pillows, and that you eat earlier. Drinks, a lot of people, again, if you're anything like me, you have to get up numerous times in the night. So thinking very much about your drink intake. So those are sort of basic things like that. Caffeine is something to consider as well. So caffeine has a very long half-life, so of about 8 hours. So if you have a caffeinated drink at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it will still be affecting you at 10 o'clock. So think about that and where the decaf alternatives might be good. Alcohol is something that sometimes people think, oh, that will help. But unfortunately, with alcohol, although it sedates you, it impairs you from sleeping properly, and it can block your dream sleep. So you have issues with processing memories and things overnight. So you can wake up feeling a bit muggy with it, really. So if possible, those are things to avoid. And also having your bedroom, which is just your bedroom and not somewhere that you work, not somewhere that you watch the telly, and having it as a place that you enjoy being. Because often what can happen is that if you have problems with insomnia, you learn to associate going to the bedroom with waking up, and it becomes a place that you dread. You start worrying, will I sleep, won't I sleep? And the thing with sleep is that it's something that we have to let happen. And the more stressed and wound up we are, the more worried we are about sleeping, the more unlikely we are to sleep. So it's important to build some positive associations with your bedroom and make sure that it is a place that you go to sleep, not a place that you go to be restless or wound up, or to do some work or look at your phone, things like that. So if you do wake up in the middle of the night, it's important that you don't then stimulate yourself and do things that your brain would perhaps rather do. So often when people wake up, they get fed up and they go downstairs, and maybe they eat something, or maybe they watch the television. And what that does is it wakes you up, and it also tells your brain that actually this is a more interesting thing than it is being asleep. And so maybe at 3 o'clock every morning, it's then going to keep waking you up because it thinks it's going to get a reward. So if you do wake up, don't lie there tossing and turning, but go and do something which is very boring and restful in a dim, cool place that you don't really want to be in. Because in a way, we're trying to punish the brain. We don't want to be awake. We want the bed to be the place that is preferable to anything. I've known people advise people to go and stand up in a corner of a cool room and read a book that they don't like, because that is more stressful than being in bed. And so they really, they want to be back in bed. If you lie there again for 20 minutes, the thought of doing that again is going to make you want to stay in bed. And even if you aren't able to sleep, if you're listening to relaxation strategies, things like that, then that's as good, really, as sleeping. So just be calm about not sleeping. Try not to get too focused on it, but do everything possible to make going to bed a relaxing, calming experience. Because the more relaxed you are when you go to bed, the more likely you are to fall asleep. And doing a bit of what I might call meditation or relaxation is a great alternative. But also things like, I've known people listen to audiobooks Somebody the other day told me that they were listening to Stephen Fry reading Harry Potter to them to calm them to bed at night. Somebody else I know uses the shipping forecast, and I also have known somebody who has recorded the Archers and listens to that, and they say it's so boring that they always fall asleep within about 5 minutes. Anyway, so it's whatever. Think about your bedroom, get it so it's gorgeous and you want to be there. Make sure you've got the sort of easy wins right in terms of light and temperature and noise, and think about the most relaxed state you could be in when you go to bed. And if you do have a mind a bit like mine that does busy brain, have a notepad by your bed and write down the things that you have to remember. And if you have specific worries, write them down. And during the day, about 11 o'clock or something like that, have a 20-minute worry time when you say, I will deal with these things then, not when I'm going to bed. So sleep is not an easy win, but there are lots of things. If you want further advice on sleep, I would recommend you look on the Sleep Council website. And also there is a good website called My Live Well with Pain. I think it's .co.uk, but you'll find it if you Google search it. They have 2 excellent booklets on there, which are on sleep. And if anybody doesn't catch it, obviously you'll have this live recording, but we will try and, I'll try and give Ollie some links so we can have it on our website as well. Okay. Right, let me just... Hi, Tina, thanks for your comment. That's very, very nice. So I think I've... Oh, and Edith, thank you, Edith. Right, now let me just have a look and see if there were any other questions that people had. Okay, we talked about that. We don't... Right. Oh, somebody had commented about their Raynaud's, and that made it difficult to manage daily activities. Okay, like meal preparation and things like that. So let's think about Raynaud's, because again, that's something that we all deal with, I'm sure. So the main thing with managing your hands, strangely enough, is managing your body. So the warmer your core, the warmer you keep your lungs and heart and your body, your central body, the better your hands will be, because your brain always prioritizes keeping the core warm. So as soon as your central temperature drops, your hands and feet are going to be icy. All right. So layers, thermal base layers, lots of clothing layers, thin layers to trap air in between them. Keep yourself warm that way. And we know gloves are not easy to help us do things day to day. So if you can keep that warm, that is best. Movement and exercise. So often when your hands feel like they're dead, you feel like the last thing you want to do is use them. But actually, that's the most important thing. Keep using them. Keep them moving. Will Gregory was talking to you all a couple of weeks ago about exercise. Now, and he was talking about doing some pendular exercises, but general getting your circulation. So that's a great thing to do. Moving and exercising to get that heart rate up, get your circulation going. That will make your hands a bit warmer. You may then feel that you are able to do things more easily. Okay. In my kitchen, I've always got a nice bowl of warm water. I will soak my hands, keep them warm, and then I can do other tasks in the kitchen. So if you've got something like that, that really helps. Or just having a heat pack on for a bit before you're going to go into the kitchen to do things. So all those things, keeping them active, moving your hands, doing some exercise or movement before you go and do tasks can make a real difference to your circulation, and then that will improve your abilities. But obviously, some of the things that we were talking about earlier about managing daily tasks then come into using your hands as well. There was another question here. A lady had asked about posture. She was concerned that she had poor posture and weakness in her legs, and that because she was shielding, she was sitting for longer. Okay, so yeah, I'm sure that it's quite hard to have daily exercise regimes, but obviously, you know, your posture can suffer. So it's absolutely vital that even if you're not doing a lot of actual exercise, that you have a routine day to day where you move little and often, that you vary your posture all the time between sit, stand, and move. Notice what's happening with your posture. So that, if we're sitting, we tend to go into that classic C shape. So if you sit a lot, but because of your health perhaps, or because you're doing tasks at home, where you're working and on the computer more, then make sure that the chairs that you're sitting in are the best that they possibly could be, that your full back is supported, that the dip of your neck is supported, that the lower back is supported. Have a lumbar cushion so that pushes you up and you will sit better upright. And posture, counts in everything that you do. So when you're standing to do things in the kitchen, when you're having a shower, whatever it is that you're doing, just have an awareness. Are your shoulders hunched up? Are you tending to round your back? And just bring yourself back into alignment. But yes, just don't worry about it too much, but little and often movement, changing your posture regularly, and having things, chairs, etc., that you use that keep you in the best posture. Have we got time for another quick one? There was a question here. A lady had asked about during shielding. She said that she was finding it very difficult to concentrate on reading a book or talking with a friend, and she had some concerns about her short-term memory. Okay, so my comment on that would be that I think that's perfectly normal, and I suspect all of us have perhaps been a little bit more stressed and agitated compared to what we normally would do. And when you're like that, it's really, really difficult to concentrate and focus. I particularly have also found that I've really struggled to read things that I normally would do, that my brain flits about a lot more. And I think that's normal. So I would say to that person, don't worry about it. Perhaps just find different alternatives. So it might be that at this time, you more want to read magazines, or perhaps listen to audiobooks compared to actually reading a book, or perhaps some more absorbing craft type activities, or playing cards or jigsaws, or just word puzzles, something that perhaps might help your focus if you're worried about your memory and your concentration. So you're still using your mind, but that you're not giving yourself a hard time if you can't focus and you can't concentrate. I think, like I say, I think it's perfectly normal, and perhaps use this opportunity to do some different things, listen to some podcasts, etc. So yeah, just some different things to try. Okay, so I hope that answers some of those questions for you. It's been so nice, and I hope it's been helpful for people. And it's lovely to see you all, and I hope that it's been helpful. I'm reading the thing and saying it's closed and it's ending, and so I'm hesitating because I think it probably has finished, like, if I'm being bizarre or anything. But if it hasn't and I'm still talking and you're thinking, oh, Lucy's being very bizarre, it's just because there's confusion about whether it's finished or not. But anyway, it's been very nice to speak to people who have some of the same issues as me, and I hope that I've been able to give you some ideas from my sort of professional experience and also my personal experience. We are hoping that we are going to put some more information on the SRUK website about occupational therapy, and also about managing day-to-day activities, which will hopefully be a helpful resource for you. Okay.